This opening is abysmal. For the uninitiated among you, Danganronpa is a visual novel cross-murder mystery series set in Japan, and involves ultra-talented secondary school students being locked in a school, or tropical island in the case of Danganronpa 2, and being forced to kill each other in order to escape. Jolly premise, am I right? The series cleverly blends together aspects from both genres to create an enthralling and unique gameplay experience, keeping you engaged at all times, and it's all topped off with a memorable and lovable cast of characters. Except you, Ibuki. Fuck off. Though, as you may have guessed, this isn't quite what we're here to talk about today. Lately, there's been one thing constantly plaguing my mind. I often zone out in conversations thinking about it. I can no longer focus in school, and at night I wake up suddenly and just think to myself, man, the Danganronpa 1 opening really isn't that good. But as we all know, every coin has two sides, and so before I rip into this opening like a rabbi ripping off a foreskin, let me first acknowledge everything that this opening did right. We cannot discuss a Danganronpa opening without acknowledging the absolutely banging music accompanying it. Seriously, the composers really struck gold when they made this. It's so bloody good. It's bizarre, it's cool, it's exciting, it's... Then Danganronpa 3 came along and just did some weird basic anime opening. I mean, it's fine, I guess, but it's not quite. As well as this, if you're playing the game for the first time, the intro does look pretty exciting and mysterious. There's loads and loads going on, and you probably won't notice a lot of the flaws that I see in it. With that being said, once you've beaten the game, you'll start to notice that there are at least a few things off with the opening. So I think now's an appropriate time to look at the other side of the coin. Without further ado, let's take a gander at what makes this opening so frustrating to me. There will be some spoilers ahead, not many, but if you want to play the game before learning about why this opening is terrible, then feel free to stop watching now. Let's first talk about the character order. Even if you've never played a Danganronpa game before, you've probably seen this two-toned bastard somewhere. If you didn't know, his name's Monokuma, and he's pretty bloody important. Only, you know, the main antagonist of the series, featured in every single Danganronpa game. So you'd think he'd get some special importance placed on him in the intro, right? Well, in Danganronpa 2, they show him off right at the start. And Monomi too, but no one really gives one about her. In V3, they save the bear's introduction for the very end. See, look, they even put him on an elevated judge's chair. The point is clear. This is an important character. Armed with this knowledge, what do you think they did in Danganronpa 1? How did they introduce this incredibly important character in his debut game? Well, they just fucking threw him in the middle. No special importance shown. Like, yeah, his face is seen a bit throughout the opening, but as for his introduction, he's given about as much consideration as the other students. Like, Big Normie Makoto is given more significance than my man Monokuma, and yeah, he is the main character, but all of his future appearances may as well be cameos, except Danganronpa 3, but we don't count that one. Whereas Monokuma is a series staple. It amazes me how little spotlight he received in this opening. Honestly, it's perplexing more than anything. The placement of Monokuma also has the unintended consequence of splitting up the characters. By placing him here, you're implying that there is something separating Makoto, Sayaka, Leon, Chihiro, Taka, Kyoko, and Celeste from Byakuya, Toko, Mondo, Hifumi, Aoi, Sakura, Yasuhiro, and Junko. And in the game, there absolutely isn't. I'm trying my hardest to think of a unifying feature for the groups created by this divide, but I really just can't. There's nothing. This brings me on to the weird obsession that this intro has with pairing the characters together. Monokuma and Makoto are strange in this regard because they're shown on their own. I guess this adds a bit of significance to them as the protagonist and antagonist, but at the same time it was a real missed opportunity to have the protagonist-antagonist pair, especially since they're going to pair everyone else up together. Don't get me wrong, some of these pairings made sense. Sayaka would of course be paired with Leon since they both share music as a common interest and they're both heavily involved with the first trial, and fun fact, they were actually the first characters designed for the game. Aoi and Sakura, again, makes sense. Their friendship's a big part of the story and they're both very athletic. But riddle me this. What are Mondo and Hifumi doing together? They don't have any big interactions, no common interests, their ultimate talent is about as opposite as you can get. One's a gangster and the other's a neat.
Hello! too!
Why did they put Kyoko and Celeste together? Besides their mysterious nature, there's nothing else connecting them. Chihiro and Taka likewise don't have anything in common, other than they both got a cop. They didn't have to do this. Every character could have just been presented on their own, and they would have avoided all of these pairing issues. Alternatively, they could have given the pairing some thought. Pair Chihiro and Hifumi together, not Hifumi and Mondo. Then Mondo could be introduced alongside Taka, and that again shows off the whole friendship dynamic you see with Aoi and Sakura. If you're gonna introduce two characters at once, then at least put some consideration as to whether those characters make sense to be introduced together, rather than haphazardly dropping them all throughout the opening. Christ on a bike. This isn't the only thing about the characters that annoys me, however. Let's move on to... Let's consider how these characters are portrayed in the opening. First, we should look at Danganronpa 2 and V3's opening, just so we have something to compare to. In Danganronpa 2, the characters' talents aren't really displayed. I mean, there's some hints of them here and there, like the pong ball behind Chiaki and the globe behind Byakuya. However, the way these characters are portrayed, it's clear that they're meant to show that this is a murder mystery game. Everyone looks like they've just committed a crime and have been placed right on the hot seat. Maharu just looks incredibly on edge, Teruteru is nervously laughing as if he's just told a really bad lie, and Nagito's standing there looking like he's saying, "I'll fucking do it again." Conversely, in V3, everyone's talent is portrayed through their art, with Kurumi surrounded by food and those serving trays shows she's a maid, Kaito sitting under the moon to show he's a spaceman. Heck, even Rantaro, whose talent is kept secret for most of the game, is portrayed perfectly, with the fact that he's sitting in the chair the wrong way and that his shadow isn't behind him like the others really highlights that he's different compared to everyone else. Oh yeah, the shadows are another excellent addition in V3's opening, really hammering home the point that you should trust nobody. So what route do they go with in Danganronpa 1? Well, similarly to V3, they prioritize showing off the talents of the characters. Sayaka's in her idol clothes, Leon's chucking a baseball. The problem is, they only really show off the talents of 7 out of 15 of the students. That's less than half. I will grant them some leniency in the fact that Makoto doesn't really have a talent, so there's not much to show off there. And you can kinda tell Kyoko is a detective based off her clothes. And I'd imagine that drawing someone in a way that the viewer can automatically tell that they're of good moral character is quite difficult. So the way Takara is portrayed doesn't really ruffle my feathers. Unlike some of the other characters. From this picture, what can I infer about Celeste? That she's French? Nothing about this says ultimate gambler. The most frustrating examples, however, are Aoi, Yasuhiro, and Junko.
Mukuro Ikusaba, the 16th student.
Did the designers just give up? Why are they just standing there? It's so dull to look at. It tells me nothing. Not to mention that these three have some of the easiest talents to portray artistically. Give Yasuhiro a crystal ball, have Junko in like literally any other pose than a neutral smug standing pose. Give Aoi some swimming goggles or something at least. Now, I'm no artist, nor would I consider myself an art critic, but frankly, you don't need to be in order to recognise where they went wrong with this. In the words of Steve Hofstetter,
because here's the thing, I've never flown a helicopter. If I saw one in a tree, I could still be like, dude fucked up.
I've spent more time than I need raving about the poses these characters are in. Let's move on to my final reason, and the reason that inspired me to make this video in the first place. Let me quickly display some of my GCSE English language knowledge to you all. A motif is a dominant or recurring idea within an artistic work, and a volta is a sudden shift in focus to something unrelated or opposite. If you couldn't tell, the third and final reason why this opening is terrible is to do with what it focuses on, and there's plenty of odd things this intro places special emphasis on, hence why I have decided to split this section of the video into its own subsections, starting with... Let's talk about the motif or recurring idea of this intro, and that motif is... Leon Kuwata. I have no clue why, but for some reason this guy's everywhere throughout the opening. If you didn't already know, Leon is the first to be executed by Monokuma, and the creators obviously love showing this off. So, see, there he is. Oh, there he is again.
There you go.
You'd almost think he was the main character of the story, but in reality he couldn't be any less important. I'm struggling to think of someone with less story importance than him, honestly. I suppose the focus on his execution keeps the opening relatively spoiler-free. However, it also distracts from what the game is actually about, and may even mislead a first-time player watching the opening for the first time. Take for instance this scene where everyone is looking at Leon after having just been executed with a barrage of balls. Baseballs, get your mind out the gutter. Plenty of people I've seen play this for the first time misinterpret this as the characters looking at someone who's just hanged themselves. And yes, while suicide is present in this game, it's not a key theme, making this scene quite misleading, as well as, totally irrelevant. Another scene which I think is quite misleading is Leon being dragged away right here. Again, it places far more importance on Leon than he really needs. Since his execution happens out of order in the opening, coupled with this scene at the start, it looks as if he's being locked away or imprisoned for later. Not to mention the fact that he's sticking out his hand right here, implying that he's not yet finished something and is being censored. Of course, we know after playing the game he's just being executed for committing murder. However, with no prior knowledge of Danganronpa, this is another scene that just confuses the idea of what the game's actually about. On top of this, the player is also informed because of these scenes that something is going to happen to Leon, and if there's one thing that absolutely ruins Danganronpa, it's knowing who won't make it to the end. After all, what good is a murder mystery if there is no mystery? Anywho, after scene of Leon torture porn, we're treated to our Volta. We're at the end of the intro now. The music is getting intense. We see an old stained piece of paper with hope written in blood slowly burn away, and behind it is Makoto looking positively horrified. But at what, you ask? Well, only the murder case files of Genocide Jack. Looks like a really plot important book, wouldn't you say? Especially if the opening is giving it this much special attention. So then, what are the murder case files of Genocide Jack? Well, it's a piece of evidence in the second trial. What, were you expecting something more spectacular? That's all the book is in the grand scheme of things. So yes, for some incredibly bizarre reason, the animators decided to place really special emphasis on a single piece of evidence that isn't even really all that story defining. And don't get me wrong, Genocide Jack certainly is more story important than a character like Leon who dies before you even get to know him. After all, she's the one who remembers. Or at least she sorta does. Regardless, I would argue that she isn't as important when it comes to advancing the plot as, say, Byakuya or Kyoko. That's what most of the problems with this intro boil down to, really. There's no reason for things to be as they are. It doesn't feel carefully crafted. Let's once again look to future entries for a good comparison, specifically V3, and this opening is the definition of carefully crafted. Everything is here for a reason, from the Team Danganronpa logo at the start, to this scene with the exosouls and the meteors falling out the sky. Absolutely everything is relevant without giving away any spoilers whatsoever. This opening also really displays the game's themes beautifully. V3 is all about truth and lies, and at the start we get to see a truth bullet filled with what looks like a bunch of garbled characters, which reappear at the end of the opening, surrounding all the characters as they debate with each other, showing that you absolutely need to cut through all the bullshit and white noise in order to uncover the truth. V3 and Trigger Happy Havoc both have very similar openings, but for everything that V3 gets right, Trigger Happy Havoc gets incredibly wrong. Nothing seems placed here on purpose. Oh, here's some scenes of Leon. Oh, there's the murder case files of Genocide Jack. Those ain't gonna be as important as you expect them to be. Here's Kyoko talking to a shocked Makoto, and despite being the second most important character in the game, this is the only other time we see her in the opening. Look at the fire behind Monokuma. Isn't it so stylistic? Too bad it's not fucking important. There just isn't any consideration here. Nothing is conveyed. V3 actually had scenes of characters actually looking like they were engaging in discussion and debate. What does Trigger Happy Havoc do? Oh, let's just throw in the words break and trial. That'll show everyone what this game is about. Remember how in V3 the bullet at the start is actually filled up with words? Well, you'll never guess what's in Danganronpa 1's bullet. I mean, Jesus Christ, guys, what's the point of this? You know how V3 conveyed the themes of truth and lies throughout its opening? Trigger Happy Havoc's theme is hope and despair, and this is only portrayed once in the opening, near the end, where that piece of paper with the word hope on it burns away, and that's it. Without this one scene, there would be no other references to ideas of hope and despair in this opening. Ludicrous. And there we have it, my autistic ramblings about why this opening sucks are over. I don't really have a big ending for this planned. Don't get me wrong, Danganronpa is a fantastic game that you should definitely play if you haven't already. Just, the opening to the first game pisses me off to like an unreasonable degree. Thanks for watching to the end, you weirdo.